How you doing? So, today's show, Conscious Communication, was supposed to start at 2 o'clock. It's looks like 2:16 now. So I'd say that's pretty good. Uh, Today is full moon in Gemini. So we already have some split attention, kind of influence going on. And then Mercury also went retrograde today. So, go figure, there's a few issues with launching the broadcast of a show, uh, and not just that, but technical difficulties. I did try to start at 2 o'clock, but actually crashed the broadcasting computer immediately upon hitting the button. That was amusing. And then, before we even got to that point, though, I realized that I was just going to have to roll with things because the show wasn't going to go off like I had originally envisioned. Because the guests and the alternates, most of them couldn't be here. One will be joining me momentarily. And so I'm not sure exactly what we're going to talk about just yet. We may go ahead and stay on topic or decide to table it for later discussion and talk about something else. But I promised a show today and I'm here to perform. The beauty about being live is that you just kind of got to go with what's going on, no matter what. There's no time to rehearse or prepare. It's just the flow of the moment. And I think that's something we don't spend enough time in, is the flow of the moment. Uh, that is where we always live, though. And I just got a message that right as I'm discussing that, my other guest said he is coming on momentarily, so here in a moment, be ready to greet him. All of you out there watching, I am sure you are as excited as I am to see where this goes. My dogs. The wind blows, they bark. It's all they know. Not for lack of trying to show them other things to do. Well, that's not true. One of them loves to dig. He thinks he's going to go somewhere else by digging through the earth. Or maybe he's chasing little wee people back into the earth. Who knows? I don't know about you, but I have had a fantastic Sunday so far. I was on a chat with the creators of Spirit Science, Spirit Studios, and it was a truly fantastic live chat today. Lots of good vibes. We had also had problems with the broadcasting, actually. Not the same, but amusingly enough, also had problems with the broadcast there. But that's okay. We just roll with it, and we'll be back next time. So I think that it is a fantastic day for me, though. I'm just happy to be here and be talking to all of you. And I hope you are enjoying your Sunday as well. Without someone else here, all I see is my profile picture, mainly in the center of my phone as I stare at the camera. And it's kind of awesome. A little like patting myself on the back there, but I really love that picture. Really happy with how that came out. It's just layer upon layer upon layer of sacred geometry and layering it in different ways and in different ways and then stacking those and continuing the pattern. It's been a lot of fun working on. Just got a message from one of my friends, and I think I'm going to go ahead and check it right now because why not? I'm kind of running this show, so I might as well be the one to decide what I'm doing during it, right? Oh, interestingly synchronistic message. All right. Hold on. It's saying it's not letting him access it. Gotta love playing with the controls. Let's see. Grab that email address again. See. All right, Ian. Sorry about the access issue. That kind of just goes hand in hand with today's theme. It would seem. I just sent you an invite through your email. Try that. Then once it opens you to Hangouts, there should be a conversation you should be able to click into, and then I mean, it should automatically do it, but I don't know why it's not. Go figure. Uh, let's see. Hmm. I don't know. I don't know why it's not letting me add, or why it's not letting you in. I'm gonna send you the link in a reply to that last email too. See if it'll let you in through there. There we go. Okay, hold on. There we go. Hopefully that should fix the problem. We shall see. Who knows? The shadow knows. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but man, what a great movie. There he is.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm waiting for Marky to get out of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had time with my daughter earlier, so
That's awesome.
What about you? What are you up to?
I just got off of a call a little over an hour ago with hold on one second. I am finishing. There we go. I just had somebody who replied back that they'd like to join the call, so I was getting them added in as well. Yeah, I was actually on a call with my friend Anthony here, who's joined us for the Spirit Side chats, and in between that call and getting this one started, which, you know, at 27 minutes into when it was supposed to officially start, on the day that's both full moon and Mercury going retrograde, I feel like I've accomplished something.
You know what? All you're doing is just operating on pagan standard time. That's it.
I like it. I like it.
Hello,
Anthony. Nice to see you here.
Hello, Anthony.
thanks for having me. Nice to meet you. Is it Maltalk?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Couldn't hear you.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, Ian. Yes. Meltiok.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure.
I'm very terrible at being a host, being as this is my first time, so I forgot to introduce you to. Probably be my job as the host. So, Ian, or Maltiok, as your screen name shows, this is Anthony. He runs an awesome YouTube guided meditation channel, as well as makes these fantastic cloaks you'll see on his profile picture there. And yeah, so I'm going to let you guys run with asking any questions to further introduce yourself from there, as I feel like I'm stumbling over my own words.
It's all good.
What were you talking about before I came in? I didn't want to interrupt what was already happening, but maybe. What was the topic, or what were you talking?
We had just gotten on because, as I said, I actually had some computer issues. As soon as I went to hit broadcast at 2:00, the whole thing crashed. So get that rebooted, get everything reset, and then for some reason, the first time I sent the link to him, it wasn't letting him actually into the call.
Yeah, it just came up as sign into Google account over and over and over again.
And so then we had to route back around, and we finally got that squared away. And then right after that, we were just talking about our day and how it's gone as I was adding you in. So how was your day going, Anthony?
It's been good, yeah. Just I was actually just on a call with Kevin after everybody left the Spirit Side chat. We stayed in and we were just having a bit of a talk, and I was saying right now I'm experimenting. Well, I've been doing this for a while, like sleep fasting. So I didn't sleep last night, and sometimes I go like a day or two without any sleep, and it's very revealing for kind of like the like I just described it to Kevin at the end as though it's like you're when you don't have anything left in the tank to overflow, like you're draining your own inner energies, and when you get to the bottom of the barrel and you're scraping the dregs out, then you start to kind of uncover some more inner distortions or inner trials that are happening. And so I was just running through some of that, and we ended up talking about a whole load of interesting issues surrounding like spiritual experiences via like ayahuasca and mushrooms, and also just like general day-to-day practices and you know, the things that unfold from those in different states of mind. So it's an interesting topic we were discussing.
It
sounds like it.
I've done a couple of let's say forced lack of sleep times from my time in the Army.
Oh yeah.
Going 38 plus hours straight, 40 hours straight. It does reveal a lot of how both how far you can go and what is holding you back from going that far to begin with. And realizing that while sleep is a necessity in some senses, it is not a necessity in every single sense, and going without it can be helpful for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
you're very right. That military, you know, the regimented training that comes from military experience, you know, I can assume is, you know, very good for push. You know, it's pushing yourself to the limits that you don't normally go through in a you know, normal day-to-day life. So it's, yeah, I find that pursuing those limits, just like you said, reveals a lot, and it's it's an interesting thing.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
Nice
I mean,
t-shirt, by
and
the way.
it's. Thank you. I love it. I also got the ring for it too.
Oh, nice.
But I mean, military training is definitely regimented, but it's one of the things I noticed, especially while I was in, was that your spiritual side has to be just as strong as your physical side, and in some cases even more so, because while, you know, people talk about the mental fortitude it takes, but from what I saw, a lot of people who had a deep level of spiritual faith, whether it was in Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, those were people who were exceedingly well done in the military. They got higher APFT scores, they scored better at the range, and having that spiritual wealth made it so that they could go through more stuff. And the people who were more agnostic or atheistic, while they necessarily didn't struggle as badly, you could see that a blow hit them harder because they did not have a wealth to draw from. And having that well is very important. But even if you're atheistic, I think having somewhat of a well in your own spiritual sense is important.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
I think that's very much in line with the way the Toltecs talked about being a warrior. It's a total experience. I mean, the samurai as well, actually. It's a total experience. You can't be just one or the other, because you're always all of them. And so they very much bring in that concept. And actually, one of their methods of testing that is very similar to what you were talking about with Kevin, Anthony, is that test of that intestinal fortitude to remain standing. What they would do is you're awake and you're walking. And so in that way, it's a lot like the Aborigines spirit walk to find yourself, you know, going walkabout. Usually the Toltecs would have some kind of hallucinogen that went with the ceremony. But the point was in that you had fasted for days leading up to the ceremony, and then you began walking, and you haven't slept for 3 or 4 days. And so in that journey, you reach that, you force that critical point where awareness must be achieved.
That's right. Yeah. It's
like your own crucible.
Well, everybody needs some form of trials and ways to test themselves regularly. I mean, even if you've gone through the seasoning to become a full warrior and stuff like that, the Spartans, the samurai, almost every warrior culture recognized that even once you reach that level of masterdom, there was still more both spiritual and physical stuff you had to do regularly, because you cannot get settled in your limits. A warrior can never truly be settled in any limit they have. Otherwise, they're not progressing their craft.
Yeah, it's no longer the limit. It's not pushing that limit. Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I was just watching Birth of the Dragon for the first time this week, and that's like the theme of that movie. Literally.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an amazing movie.
I'll have to check. I haven't seen that one.
It blew me away.
They admit that it's a more dramatized version of the actual events, but that extra dramatic stuff that they add really gives you the depth that you need to see these kind of internal battles. Because just going by the standard, there's the Dragon that was released in the 80s, which was another Bruce Lee movie that went through his whole entire life. It had its little bit of dramatic moments, but it focused more on the serious side, and you didn't get the internal struggles of conquering not only one's ego, but seeing that limits don't actually exist to begin with. And that is the whole idea that they wanted to show in this one, is that Wong Jack Man really taught, and I don't want to give away spoilers and like that, but really taught that limits are non-existent. They're something you place on yourself to either help you or hurt you. You have to decide which one's which, but you have to be aware of that major fact, and that's really one of the big things he was trying to teach.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think that's actually the purpose that the Western world, for the word religion, at least in English, its root is to bind. It's to bind yourself to a set of beliefs, to a paradigm for your own personal growth. It's to give yourself context within which to measure your own growth. That's its purpose right there, but it's the limit that you chose. That's the key.
And that's something that's lost nowadays too. I don't know how far you've seen on it, Anthony, and like that, because I've just met you, but what I've seen around a lot lately is that people act like religious boundaries and bonds are put upon them rather than they are self-putting. And it does make that, major difference when you think that somebody else put this limit on you versus you put this limit on yourself.
That's right. It's and you just reminded me of that part in a documentary, Tuning In, where it shows all the channelers from around the world and their interviews with them, and one of them, who through the channel is saying everything that we do is kind of like putting out an order. Imagine you're say throwing out a boomerang. You go up to the roof of your building and you throw out a boomerang. You're putting out an intention, you're putting out an order, and you have to stay within that limitation. You have to put yourself through that trial of being in the state where you put out that order, for example, for it to return. You have to, the universe will answer in its own way. And if you go up or down, you move outside of that level where you made the intention, then you can miss the return. And then that can create a lot of distortion in the message that comes back, but at the same time it's unlimited possibility, so it can go either way. But that's was one key part. I remember from the movie, you just reminded me of it, the setting of the intention to return to you. You'll receive the I can't think back to it.
I think I understand what you mean, and that is very true too. And it factors a lot into moving. And when you're talking about moving different levels, and the way that you send something out as an intention. Using your example, you send out that boomerang, and then let's say you try and run down to the to see if it goes there. Well, you realize it didn't go there, so you go back up, and because you returned to a previous point, even though you were expecting a result to happen, the universe chose something different because you weren't there to receive the message. So when you send something out, and you send an intention, or you use your will to personify something, you have to continue to be there for it to return. And I wholeheartedly agree with you that, you have to expect that the universe is going to answer in its own way. And in order for you to receive the answer to that question, you have to be there to get that answer.
Yeah.
And on that same level.
Yeah. The
That
faith, intention.
yes. Go ahead, Anthony. I'm sorry.
No. Don't worry. I'm just agreeing. It's yeah. That wrapped it up very nicely.
It reminds me of the fourth law of the Magi. The fourth law of the Magi says to keep silent. So, and what that teaches us, at least according to my teacher, when he was going over the four laws of the Magi, he liked to relate them to the four elements that we used in Circle. And so we would always start and end at North, the element of Earth. And Earth always represented the to keep silent. And so the idea was that as you set an intention going to East to know what you want, and then you continue to South to fire and the courage to dare to work towards it, which is to set that intention, build that energy, and then let go that energy as you move through water, feel it to really sink into that feeling, so much so that you don't then second guess the intention that you just set. You just accept that it already is, feel it as though it is, so that you are there when the boomerang arrives, right?
Oh, definitely. I know exactly what you mean there. I think you just left us for a second. He'll be back. But one of the things that, because you bring up that, being silent part.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about it on there too, just to summarize, I was saying he brought up the silent part.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those things I've seen a lot of newer practitioners and a lot of newer people do any spiritual work have a problem with. They want to have this intention or they make this prayer and this wish, and then they begin to talk about it constantly. They begin to try and vocalize it to everybody in existence, saying, I do this spell to do this. And I remember when I was working with the Fort Soul Circle, I heard a lot of people talk about stuff that they wanted and stuff like that. And my thought process, even though I never really tried to vocalize it to them because it was a much more complicated situation there, is that the moment that you speak on these things outside of your intentions, you're warping your intentions. It's kind of like, let's say, for example, a kid goes and asks their parent saying, well, I want this toy. And then they come back 15 minutes later and try and expand on what that toy is. And 15 minutes later after that, and 15 minutes later after that. Even though they may be describing the same toy, by the end result, the parent's like, I have no idea what you want. You've changed your mind 87 times, and it doesn't sound like it's the same thing. And it works the exact same way with sending out your intentions. You cannot, add on to it because the universe is always listening, and eventually you're going to say something that says, this is not what you wanted to begin with, so which one am I giving you?
I like that. I mean, I like to think of it often more as a almost like a spinning top. So you set that intention, you've begun to spin it. I don't know about you, but once you do the start of a top and then you try to come back in and add energy to it, what happens? It inevitably wobbles and falls, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's it's right in line with that. It's like you're wobbling it. Stop wobbling it at that point. Mm-hmm. You already did the thing. The only reason to talk about it at that point is if you don't really want the thing. Anyways, we were going to talk about grimoires, books of shadows, and the personal traditions about them.
I'm just going to have to say...
Okay, no problem.
uh, it's a lot. But thanks for talking, guys.
I'm happy to have you, Anthony. It was great to see you here.
Nice
Maybe
meeting
I'll
you.
catch up with you when
Will
we
do.
Another talk.
Sounds great.
I hope everything. Well, take care, guys. Enjoy your day, and namaste.
So much love, Anthony. And a moment of silence for our friend.
I was having a little bit of trouble hearing him.
Yeah, I think his internet might have been going in and out. Who knows? It might have been on my side. Who knows? It appears from across the room to all be working, so I think we're good. But what I was going to say was we were going to go, into grimoires and books of shadows and things like that. But I think that the lesson in the events of today is that we are doing an object lesson in Mercury retrograde's effects, right? And not only that, but how you can still move forward with plans, communication, conversations, and the launching of new ventures on Mercury retrograde or during Mercury retrograde. It's not so much in that it's something to demonize as in something to be aware of, that your mode of communication may shift or there may be issues that were unforeseen, and so be ready to adapt, right?
And that's probably one of the number one things that you can ever explain to anybody is that adaptability. I was actually talking with my daughter about that earlier because at 8 years old, she's paranoid, and it reaches on that full-on paranoid level about finding a husband and having kids and stuff like that. And first off, my thought as a father is, no, you are too young. Wait till you're 30 at least. I prefer 50, Let me be in the grave when you decide to have kids. But she was she got at one point got upset saying she has too much to think about and she doesn't feel like she's getting any help. And I had to stop her and explain. I'm like, first off, you have time. You will always have time. And that's the same thing that we're dealing with here is that, we set this thing for 3 o'clock originally, or 2 p.m. Central for your time. Mm-hmm. And one thing or another came in, and it came in a little bit later than that. But we still had time. It's not like we were stuck here and, we only had 2 to 3, and that's it. Having that extra time is important, and then having the adaptability to adjust to those scenarios and saying, okay, it's not working by the link he's providing me. Let's see if I can find this workaround here. Do this or that and like that. On your end, fixing the internet, fixing the Hangout the moment that it crashed, and seeing what's causing that issue and stuff. You have to. Adaptability does require a little bit of a skill set, but it requires a lot of the desire to use that skill set.
I'd agree. I think that, well, and even still, the skills aren't usually going to be the impediment so much as a willingness to try, because you may not succeed because you don't have the skill to do the task yet, but trying means that you're getting closer and closer to completing the task successfully, and eventually you will. So I think it's that if you were right on about it's the willingness to try it. It's to use your action towards a goal.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen a lot of both younger Wiccans and seasoned ones, and people who I kind of see sometimes more doing surface work and stuff, and they use the Mercury's in retrograde or it's a full moon and say that's all I can do. I guess it didn't work this time. I'll try it again in a week or two. And or even more so, people who get stuck in the pattern that you can only do certain spells and certain rituals on certain specific days. And honestly, to me, that drives me nuts. And it drives me nuts for numerous reasons, but the one that comes to mind most is that you do not, you seem to be under the intention that the universe disappears and only appears in a certain way on a certain day. And the universe is always there. The planets are always there. Yes, Saturn may not be in the perfect right that second alignment, but it still exists. The planet ain't going anywhere. It's that thought process that, you know, something is happening doesn't mean that, or isn't happening, that doesn't mean that you're stuck in nothingness and you're unable to achieve your goal. Those ideas are good as training, but they're not the ultimate step.
It's hilarious. I'm drinking coffee out of this coffee mug that I made, right? And so it says, if it's important to you, you will find a way. If it's not, you will always find an excuse for not doing it. And it's very much in line with that idea of it's going to be on you, no matter what. You got to make it happen. And if you try to project it out onto the power exists within some other, then you will never have the power to do anything to change your life because you're waiting on some other to give you permission. When really, that's just another form of personal permission slip for you to let yourself change.
And you know, that, to me, too, I mean, the only part I see as the difference on there, too, is that people, is a lot of people use the idea that, not necessarily, I wouldn't say, I'll probably disagree more that, you know, as a permission slip. What I've seen is people think about it as a mandate. More than like, you know, asking permission. They feel like they need some high decree of, you know, that's written in writing, because you see a lot of people, and it's not...
That's why I use the term. It's not that they need permission. It's that's the only way they'll give themselves permission. That's why I'm calling it that.
I look at it more on the, because the reason I use the term like decree is because you see it in almost every field. You not just, you know, in spirituality, but physicality. If it doesn't, you know, people say if it's not in the manual, then we can't do it that way. If it's not in this, we cannot do it that way. And that.
But this is the way we've always done it. Right.
And that is, I hate that phrase. I heard that way too much in the Army. I loathe that phrase because, yeah, it may work, but it doesn't mean that it's working right or working smart.
Or the best that it can.
Or that, you know, or that it was working to begin with. I mean, it's there's plenty of things I saw that did not work in the Army, that did not make any sense, but people still did them because that was the way it was always done. And we're doing it, but we know it's not going to work. Well, why are you doing it to begin with? Why are you even trying?
Yep. That's honestly, in my day-to-day, the counseling that I do, and there's not revealing anything. It's just that's my most common thing that I have to just like ask with most people is just that simple route back of logic there of why. You know it's not going to achieve the objective that you need it to achieve. You know that it's a problem. What could be so scary about trying it a different way? It's not that hard.
Well, it's another one, because I had a lot of conversation with my daughter today about this too. Is she thought people's biggest fear was a fear of knowledge, and I said I think more so a lot of people are afraid of being ignorant, and they've turned ignorant into this word that's the most heinous, horrible word that you could ever say. Oh, don't call me ignorant. Don't say that. I'm not ignorant, because they think it means stupid and not it's uninformed. I mean, I've never actually physically been in space. I know about space, I understand space, but I have never physically been up in a rocket into space. So I'm kind of ignorant on that experience. That is perfectly okay because I haven't done it yet. And it's being able to admit that changes things a lot more, and that's what people don't want to do. They don't want to admit that something, that they don't know something, or that they know that this is not working, but they don't want to know the way that it works, because then they have to admit they're wrong. And that's the scariest thing for a lot of people to admit, is that they're wrong.
I'd agree. I think coupled with that one, there's also the fear to learn it, because if they did understand it, then they couldn't keep making the excuses that have allowed them to remain the same so far.
Mm-hmm. Well, change is a very scary thing for a lot of people. I'm not, and it should be scary. I don't think we should ever take away the fear of change. I think conquering that fear and does a lot more for somebody than saying that change is good and you shouldn't be afraid of change. You should definitely be afraid of change. You should be terrified of change, but you still change.
Don't skip out on the experience just because you're scared to start it.
Exactly, and doing it that way makes it so where you get more out of the experience. If you're not afraid of something, then or something's not challenging for you, then you're not going to get as much out of it. Challenge and fear and all the emotions in between add to an experience in the same way that school adds to a base of knowledge in some senses.
I agree. I like to call it contrast or texture,
Mm-hmm.
but it's resistance or struggle is exactly what I'm saying there, and it's right in line with what you're talking about. Where if you don't have that, it's impossible to understand where you're at, number one, or how much you might have grown, because you need that awareness, that contrast, to provide the difference. You can't expand awareness from the same spot without acknowledging where you are.
Yeah, and that is very true. And you can't, you can't measure your trials versus somebody else's, too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I do have that issue. I've seen it in a lot of books of people trying to basically dick measure their trials against somebody else's, and it doesn't work. I mean, it does. It's the same reason you can't sit there and say that somebody isn't a master at 20 something versus that they aren't a master at 50 something. You cannot quantify experience in the same way that you can quantify numbers, because I mean there are people who have gone through more in a year of life than some people go through in 2 or 3 decades, and they're trying to measure that back and forth. It doesn't work, because there's no real system that's going to ever work to do it.
And that's because each person is truly unique. I mean, sure, we have many similarities from person to person, so much so that we have archetypes that exist so that we can see these common themes that thread throughout us as humans. But regardless of, how true to an archetype we are in our personal story, it's still a completely unique perspective every single time. And we need that uniqueness. We need to share that uniqueness by living our lives. And that's what helps each of us further define who we are and what we want to do.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. And it's sharing the uniqueness and then acknowledging that uniqueness is a goal. Because, I mean, it is the most popular trend nowadays in society of uniformity and standardization, and it makes sense because one, those things aren't scary, and two, those things are lacking precision. I mean, they're blunt tools, and uniqueness is not. Uniqueness is very well defined. It's the difference between. I mean, there are millions upon millions of nails of the same length and the same type and the same metal. There are millions upon millions of nails, but there are less types of hammers, and then even more so, there are less types of manual versus electric hammers, and even more so, there are less types of another thing. And it goes into the more unique you make something, the more that you the more that you add to it, and it becomes something more and more refined and more precise.
Yeah, specific was the word I was going to go for, but precise works perfect. Yeah. I think that's it. We begin with a general feeling and we work towards a specific end or expression. All right. Well, I think that it is now 3:02, so I'm going to go ahead and call that for the day. And I want to say thank you, Ian, for being here, and we will reset this idea for the actual talk on the grimoires at a future point. All right.
Okay.
And make sure to tell Marky I said hello. And so much love.
Hi there.
I hope you both have a wonderful Sunday.
You
You
too.
too.